sometimes we need to redefine a method in a derived class. For example, here in the widget class, let's add a method called draw. Now, because in this method, we are not going to change the state of a widget object, we should mark this as constant. Now, let's generate the definition. I don't know what happened to the constant keyword. We have to deal with it. So here we're going to print drawing a widget. Now, the algorithm for drawing a text box is definitely different from a generic widget. By the same token, every special kind of widget like checkbox, radio button, and so on needs its own drawing algorithm, right? So here we need to redefine this method in the text box class. So here in the text box, we add draw with the constant keyword. Now let's generate the definition. Now in the generated code, we have a call to the draw method of the base class. We don't need this for now, so let's remove it. And instead, we're going to print drawing a text box. Okay, now back to our main function. So here we have a text box. Now, let me comment out this line. We don't need it. If we call box.draw, obviously we see drawing a text box. Beautiful. However, if we pass this text box to the show widget function, so let me remove this line. Instead, we're going to pass our text box to the show widget function. And in this function, we call widget.draw. Now here's a question. What do you think we're going to see when we run this program? Are we going to see drawing a widget or a text box? Let's find out. So we see drawing a widget. Here's the reason. In this case, even though we're passing a text box object by reference to this function, the compiler uses a technique called static or early binding. So at compile time, it knows that because we're working with a widget object, the draw method of the widget class has to be called. But what if you want to draw a text box? Well, this is where we use the virtual keyword. So we go to our base class, where we declare this method, we prefix it with the virtual keyword. With this, we tell the compiler to use a different technique called late or dynamic binding. So at runtime, the compiler will decide what draw method to call depending on the kind of object we pass here. So if we pass a text box, the draw method of the text box will be called. Let me show you. So let's run the program. Now we see drawing a text box. Okay. Now back to the text box class. Because we declared this method as virtual, we say we are overriding the draw method instead of redefining. So overriding means redefining a virtual method. Now, practically speaking, you shouldn't really redefine your methods. You should override them. So if you have a method that might be changed in derived classes, you should always declare that method with virtual and then override it in derived classes. Now, a lot of people confuse overriding with overloading. What is the difference? The difference is that with overloading, we provide different versions of a function with different signatures. So we have a function with the same name, but different types of parameters. But with overriding, we are redefining a function with the same signature. So both the draw method in the text box and in the widget class, they have the same signature, right? We don't have different versions with different parameters, okay? Now, when overriding a virtual method, the best practice is to add the override keyword here at the end. And with this, we're telling the compiler that we're actually overriding the draw method of the base class. So if tomorrow we decide to make any changes in the signature of this method in the base class, the compiler will warn us. For example, if we go here and add an integer parameter. Now, back to our text box, the compiler is complaining that this method is no longer overriding the draw method of the base class, because now we have two methods with two different signatures. So let's quickly recap what you learned in this lesson. If you have methods that are likely to change in derived classes, you should declare them using the virtual keyword. We don't need this anymore. And in derived classes, you should override them using the override keyword. All right, now as your exercise, I want you to add a method for drawing a shape in the shape class. Then override this method in all derived classes.